everybody. How are you? All right. Everybody's having a good time, right? All right. So, normally I would ask how many people were here for the first time at Quilt Market, but we know a lot of you are. So I had a backup question. How many people in the audience have actually been to Highclere Castle? I've been there. Wow, okay, then we are giving a wonderful treat. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what we're going to do so you know what to expect. I'm going to introduce to you the head of costume design for Downton Abbey, award-winning Caroline McCall. Then we're going to introduce to you Donna Woods, who's the head of production design for Downton Abbey, award-winning. Earlier this year, Kathy Hall, who's our head of design for Andover Fabrics, and myself made a trip to England, and we were lucky enough to have private meetings with our honored guests, and to see their studios in London, and to have a special visit to Highclere Castle. And I'm going to walk you through a very short slideshow, so you guys will feel like you've been there. All right, and then what we're going to do is we'll just, since everybody's had a chance to see the quilts on display, and this is just some of what we've created for Downton Abbey, we're just going to give some acknowledgements and thanks, so you know some of the people who helped with the effort. And if there's time, we're going to do a question and answer period. All right, we filled the questions already. So we'd like to get started now. So we're going to have Caroline McCall please come up on stage and just share with us some of your inspiration. Thank you.
Wow. I'm not used to talking in front of so many people, so bear with me. As costume designer on Downton Abbey, I'm responsible for the clothing for all the principal cast, as well as the extras. And I have a team of 8 full-time members of staff, and then we have extra people that come in to help fit and fit the extras and help dress the actors and the extras and get everybody ready. For Series 4, the principal cast have required around 450 costumes, not to mention the hundreds of extras that we have as well. The costumes are made up from hired stock from costume houses. Some of those will be original and some of those have been made over time. And I also buy a lot of vintage, which sometimes transformed into something completely different if it's falling apart, or sometimes you can find really beautiful things that work as they are. And then there's also quite a lot of costumes made from scratch. I start by doing lots of research from the period, because we don't have the scripts. I don't have the scripts in it when I begin working on Downton, so you do lots and lots of research around the time, and putting together picture reference of what each character might wear at that time. And then when I get the script, then I can work those things out. And then when I've worked through the script, you work through each character and what costume requirements each of those characters will require, and you start first by seeing what exists. So you go to a costume house and you work through all the costumes that are there and think, well, Elizabeth McGovern might be able to wear this, or Michelle Dockery might wear this, but there's also things that you know that you're never going to find and that you're going to have to design, so wedding dresses and things like that. I began on Downton on Series 1 as the assistant costume designer. I was Susanna Buxton's assistant, and I took over designing Series 3 and Series 4. When we began on Downton, We had 22 characters to establish that the audience had to quickly get to know and care about. Although Downton is fictional, these characters could have existed and the situations they find themselves could well have happened. What we wanted to create was a look that's historically accurate, yet acceptable and pleasing to a modern audience. When Downton opens in 1912, a family such as the Crawleys would have been extraordinarily wealthy. They would have enjoyed the best of everything. All Robert's clothes would have been tailor-made for him in London, and Cora and her daughters would have travelled to London to see the collections, designer collections, and Paris for their best clothing. And that they would have a local dressmaker as well for their less formal clothes. This is a time when how you presented yourself was everything. You took great pride in your appearance. There was no such thing as casual. So the servants of Downton Abbey would also present themselves very well. They would have taken great pride in their appearance and the fact that they worked at Downton Abbey. So even when they have a day off, they look smart and reasonably fashionable. They would have dressed the best they possibly could because of the position that their job had. In order to establish all of these characters, they need to have their own style. And this is what I discussed with David and Kathy when they came to visit us at Downton. The characters represented in the collection are Violet, Mary, Edith and Sybil. Violet is the matriarch of the family, the Dowager Countess, and her looks loosely based on Queen Alexandra. They would have been contemporaries. Queen Alexandra's style never changed much after she was around 40. She was an Edwardian lady. She wore high neck collars, knit waist, her dresses were to the floor. She always looked immaculate, and that's the look we've achieved on Maggie Smith. The fabrics of the first series were heavy damask silks and lace, and these are represented in the collection. Her wardrobe with a lot of mauves and greys, and that's not only because that's what suits Maggie Smith, it's also because a lot of women, when they became widows, would have carried on wearing the colours of half mourning, or quite sombre colours. So all her wardrobe tends to be in quite dark tones. As we move through the series, Violet continues to wear similar style clothes, but the fabrics become softer, the waistline not as nipped to indicate we've moved forward into the 20s. Violet's three granddaughters have very different style indeed. Mary sees herself as the heir to the estate, even though that can only happen through marriage. Her look is classic, stylish, yet still fashion conscious, much like Kate Middleton today. She never wears anything too daring or risky, but always alluring. Michelle Dockery particularly suits blues and burgundies, which is why these are Mary's colours in the collection. She's always worn burgundy burgundy reds and key moments in the series. You watch through the series. In series 1, when she meets Pamuk, she wears a reddy burgundy dress. When she's at the train station with Matthew in series 2, she wears a burgundy suit. When she gets engaged, it's a burgundy dress. When she goes to the train station in series 3 off to Scotland, not knowing what will become of Matthew, she's also in a burgundy suit. And also in the collection there's a sort of feather motif, and we chose that because again she's worn sort of a feather motif in key moments. She wears a feather in her hair in series 1 with Pamuk, and she has a beautiful feather hairslide in series 3 that she wears quite a lot. Edith. Poor Edith, she's supposedly the ugly duckling. But Susanna and I never saw her as such. She's ill-fated, and and she's the character whose look has changed the most throughout the 4 series, and that's partly to do with she's always trying to allure some man or other, and she dresses accordingly. So series 1, she sort of dresses older than her years because she's trying to seduce Anthony Strallan. In series 2, she has her working gear for when she's down the farm, when she gets keen on the farmer, and then her kind of nursing look. And then series 3, after she's jilted, she becomes her own woman really for a bit, and is much more fashionable and in this working world where she meets Gregson and is then trying to allure a married man. But the constant in Edith's wardrobe has been her colours of coral and green. She's worn a lot of coral and green since series 1, and a lot of print. So again, you'll see that Edith's colours are coral and green tones. Sybil was always the most free-spirited and modern, and teal featured heavily in her wardrobe. And if you remember the pantaloons from series 4, series 1, they were bright sort of teal coloured, and they were inspired by Paul Poiret. And Paul Poiret is credited as the first designer to embrace bright colours and pattern and present haute couture creations in yellows, blues, bright pinks and vivid greens. His inspiration for these brightly coloured creations came from the arts, the Folies and the Ballet Russe, and they took Paris by storm. So Sybil's patterns are very modern looking, but they would have been, there was such a movement in the arts in the early century that was really sort of ahead of their time. So her patterns are quite different to the others. But what features heavily in what I do is colour, and trying to put all those people in a room in different colours. So they all work together, nobody ends up in the same shade. And that seems to be the same in the collection, that they're those colours that each of the characters tend to wear the most.
Okay, so Donald is going to come up and we're moving the mic over. He's a little bit taller.
Good morning, everybody. Well, Caroline's given all the details. I just need to really fill in the background of where Downton started, really. When we first started in 2009, looking for the house, Downton Abbey. So it's just as much a character as any of the actors you see throughout the series. So it's very important to find the right house. It's set in Yorkshire, the north of England, although actually the house in the end ended up much nearer London. But we visited, I guess, 40 houses throughout England and Wales, and probably looked online and location scouts probably 100 houses. Funnily, the first house we ever visited was Highclere Castle. We then carried on to a lot more. But it was very important, really, to make it a house that was recognisable. A lot of 17th and 18th century houses in England are beautiful and elegant, but quite similar. All the rooms are quite similar, quite difficult to differentiate between one room and another. Whereas Highclere, each room is very different in itself. It was a house built by two of the great architects of England at the time, Sir Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin. Sir Charles Barry built St Pancras Station. Pugin was working on the House of Parliament at the time. So it's having the two greatest architects in the land work on your house. It's a remodelled house. So it was the original house was there from the 1600s, but this was remodelled in the 1800s. So within the house there's great rooms. You've seen the series. The library is probably one of the greatest in England. It's stunning. The French neoclassical drawing room, once again different again. The main hall is carved stone, Italianate and Gothic revival. And the dining room dominated by a 14-foot high portrait of Charles I by Van Dyck. So really very different throughout each room, and really all of those rooms gave us our colours, our textures and our palette for the series. It was a house really that typified that later part of that century, and I think we needed to establish a house that was much later than probably many of the houses in England. Another main influence on the colours and textures of the series is the village of Bampton in Oxfordshire. It's about an hour's north of Highclere. It's a very pretty village and has wonderful stonework which matches Highclere and also part of Yorkshire where the whole series is set. It's mellow, it's grey, warm Cotswold stone, and these were the colours that really influenced the below stairs, the servants' areas of our series. The servants' rooms themselves were always going to be built on the soundstage. Every house I went to, all those rooms now are used as offices or tea rooms or storage rooms or whatever, so we always knew we'd have to build every single servant's room. We also now build on the soundstage all the bedrooms. Some of them used to film at Highclere, but now for logistical reasons, should build on the soundstage. Plus many other sets that come and go. That Lady Violet's Dower House is now built on the soundstage as well, once again for logistical reasons. So really those locations really led us to our colours and palettes and themes for the whole series, and I guess the other thing was, as Caroline alluded to, was that is research. All of us have got a huge collection of probably too many reference books over the years. Got the internet, various museums in England and private collectors, and we've got a lovely, very interesting historical advisor called Alistair Bruce. So the combination of those two things led us to where we got to, really. I think, like Caroline, we take great care in getting everything as correct as we can. I'm sure we've made mistakes, I'm sure people have spotted them, but on the whole we tried to get it right, and I think we all have, really. The main difference between the rooms and the architecture and the furniture, as opposed to the costumes, is that from 1912 to season 4 now, which is 1922-23, costumes went through immense change of fashion, whereas in fact furniture, drapes, wallpaper, paint, all those things throughout the First World War didn't change. There was other things on the minds of the world than doing interior decoration. It really wasn't until 1925 and the Paris exhibition, where Art Deco first appeared, that there was a huge siege change in interior design. So my area hasn't really changed throughout the whole series, slightly, but not so much certainly as Caroline. So to sum up, really, Downton as a look, above stairs is diverse, rich, textured, lavish and colourful. And below stairs is monochromatic, restrained, simple but still atmospheric. But the trick is to combine those two visual experiences under one roof. And I think with our combination of research, locations, and I guess a bit of creativity from myself and the team, we've created Downton Abbey. Thank you.
It's so interesting to hear the background and the perspective that Caroline and Donald have given us, because when we first talked about doing Downton Abbey as a license, the first impression of so many folks was, oh great, we're going to have Art Deco. But the show is so historically accurate that that was not what was going to happen. We knew that. And one of the reasons why we're so excited to be doing these fabrics is because as an industry, we are so creative. We have explored everything. We all know we do wonderful reproductions. The 1800s are just wonderful for us to develop designs from. We've all done 1930s. We've done 1950s. We're actually even doing 2013. it's really interesting to see some of our new modern designers speaking with Caroline and Donald, because they're about the opposite end of the spectrum. So what hadn't been done before was the very early 1920s period. And when Kathy and I first started doing the research, we spent days, literally days. We went through, I would say, at least 1,000 documents that were dated from the early 1900s through the 1920s. And of course, we had to eliminate anything past at this time when we were developing it around 1922. We couldn't go past that. But we were looking at designs that were so different from anything we've ever done before in this industry. And it was just wonderful for us to have that opportunity to work with them. So we're going to now do the slideshow of our visit. What we did not include were slides from the first day of our visit, which was to the Ealing Studios in London, which were all of the downstairs rooms, which they've recreated. So we'll ask some questions, possibly of Donald later, about some of the interesting tidbits that we learned when we were downstairs. They have recreated the staircase that goes from downstairs to upstairs, so it's exactly the same right there. We're not showing you the pictures of me sitting on them, but we have some. All right, so Tony, let's cue the slides. So it's a long drive up to Highclere Castle, and what you see at first when you're coming there are these signs welcoming you before you get to the estate. And it's just a beautiful countryside. You have to imagine that it's London, it's England, so it was raining, it was even snow flurrying. And we are so lucky that as we turned on the drive to approach the castle, the sun came out. And what we're looking at here is where they're filming the last scene for episode 1 that's going to air this January 6th, coming up. And those are the production trucks outside. One of the characters of the show for us that we don't talk about, we're not going to costume, is the incredible, beautiful countryside and the scenic panoramic views that you have for the outdoor shots. So here's the first of many panoramas we took. And you're going to notice in the distance on some of these shots, Donald, you could tell me again the term for it, but old Greek whimsical outdoor structures that really had no reason to be are scattered throughout this estate. And in the distance, I believe there's one of them off to the left of the castle. This is the tree that we've seen in so many of the seas. We couldn't resist it. We have lots of those pictures. So the entrance to the castle, we actually got to walk through the door. So it's a freezing cold day in March, and the first thing we saw were space heaters. That's how they were warming the cast members and the workers. And the grand entrance, where the Christmas tree would normally be set up, you see is full of equipment. And we do have one glamour shot of me. And the portrait, which I'm not sure if you see clearly, is an original portrait for one of the ladies of the house, the original, the authentic family. The library is fascinating. We're going to show you close-ups of some of the books there. You can't touch them. They were cordoned off. Kathy and I couldn't resist ourselves, so we've got another glamour shot. We'll talk in a moment a little bit about the sets and what happens from the lights when they go on and turns it. Don't we really want to know what happened during the girlhood of Queen Victoria? Seriously, it could be a movie, The Natural Secrets. What are the King's secrets? So what happened when the grand architects were commissioned to redo Highclere Castle is they actually built a facade around the outside of it. But in the courtyard, they did not waste their time or money covering the original brick. They just created a facade above where it was in common view. Those of you who have watched know that Thomas hatches a lot of blocks out in this courtyard. There were none of his cigarette butts still outside that house, security guard, but they must have cleaned them up. And the authenticity, the real attention to detail is that the show, Donald, has sourced even fish crates. You know, we were asking all kinds of questions about the kitchen and the implements, and they made it so authentic. So we did an inside tour. We went out to the courtyard, we came back inside, and this is a spoiler. I'm sorry, I'm in trouble. I should have said it. So that scene takes place in the dining room, and there you saw it set. I want to talk about that for a moment, but these are just shots to see what it looks like of the production. This is the original Van Dyke portrait of Lord Carnarvon, and that, I can't even tell you how many millions of dollars that's worth. And that's what hangs in the front of the dining room. And we're going to end with some classic shots. So, you know, we literally spent half an hour just walking around outside the grounds, just taking shot after shot. We were privileged to be able to watch about 3 rehearsals and about 5 takes before we left of scening that first shot in the dining room. And what you don't know, it's like what Caroline said, 450 costumes without even, you know, during the series for 1 year, without even talking about the extras. Just that one scene to film in the dining room, there had to be 40 people involved. We were outside, and we had the headphones on watching the monitors of what went on, but imagine doing a scene, you know, over and over again, and it has to be authentic. So all the water glasses that had been drunk from during the scene have to be refilled. They have to have a staff just to refill water glasses to make sure that the scene looks accurate when they start that again. So there are incredible details that go into this. And it was just, the first day was all work at Ealing Studios with Donald and Caroline. And we had, of the 1,000 documents we had gone through, we had gone over with about 130 documents. And we had tried to sort them out to the different characters. But Caroline corrected that we had one at the end. That's just a little artistic take. So, you know, the gate was open, but they had the sign still in the gate. But we figured after we left, gate closed. And that's the silhouette image of the castle in the distance. By the way, the sun went behind the clouds after we left. So basically, that first day in London was work, and we did go to the studios, but that second day at Highclere Castle were the best days of my life. It was pure vacation. I mean, there was no work, we just went to see, and it's a fantastic visit. All right. I'm going to invite Daryl. Daryl is our brand manager at Andover Fabrics, and without her, none of this product would be here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to acknowledge and thank some of the people who worked so hard getting us so much of this content available for everybody to have to be able to make up beautiful quilts and dresses and other things. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to name some of the different designers who helped us create such beautiful projects and apparel and hats, and so I'm just, am I too close? Okay, I'd like to thank, we'd like to thank Andover, Mountain Peak Creation, Needle in a Haystack, Nancy Dillard, Quilt Woman, Heidi Pridemore, Lucy Bosley, Whirly Good, Kate Mitchell, Marge Ryan, E-Vintage for the 1-hour dress patterns, Pink Sand Beach Designs, A Quilter's Dream by Annie, So Many Creations, Poorhouse Quilt Designs, Umbrella Joan, and Paper Pieces for all their help getting all of this together. Here's the UFO. I love that.
Oh, I'm not finished, but I have to admit that I did the handwork, and then Joe Morton and Linda Collins helped me do all the piecing, and I used paper pieces for the nexies. Paper pieces. How's that? I use that for all my, but it's the only unfinished one. I will tell you, I outlined the castle with just a black Sharpie. So it shows a little more, so you might want to do that if you use it for a center.
Kathy, how long does it take you to do one hexagon?
I hate to say it took me about an hour to
She's saying about 1 hour for hexagons that she's hand doing. So one of the things that was so wonderful about this time period is that what's old is new again. So it turns out, and I personally didn't know this ahead of time, that hexagons were really, really authentic and the rage back in the early 1920s. And crazy patch quilting. So what you're seeing in so much of the content that we've produced and provided here is literally historically accurate to that time frame. And you're going to see that the dress patterns, the paper piecing, those are the authentic dress patterns for that time period. And you're going to see that with the hats, the millinery. I think we have time that what we'd like to do is invite Caroline and Donald up on the stage. And we fielded a lot of questions ahead of time. And we're going to ask some of these questions and see if they have interesting stories to tell us. So I figure what we'll do is we'll ask some of the questions, and some of them are directed directly to Caroline, some are to Donald, some both can answer. But we're gonna start with some easy things, I think, because we're just curious people. So I would ask for both Caroline and Donald, when did you know that you wanted to be in production design, costume design? And what was your first job in TV or movies?
I wanted to do costume from a really young age, not that I knew anybody in the industry or anything about it, but I enjoyed making things, and I wanted to train to be a costume maker or a designer, and I went to Wimbledon School of Art that does a costume course. And at the time, the BBC were doing a training scheme, and I won a place on that. So my first trainee job was on a series called Randall Hopkirk Deceased. Randall Hopkirk Deceased. And then the next job after that, which couldn't be more different to Downton, was a film called Snatch, directed by Guy Ritchie and starring Brad Pitt.
Very nice.
I suppose I did interior design really. I was basically interested in architecture and design, but there was a 3-month contract at the BBC which I took up and then stayed for 18 years, so I guess I got sucked into it.
He stayed longer than Matthew.
That's easy enough. But I suppose the first major thing I did was John le Carré Smiley's People when I was young sister on that, which is about 18 something like that. So yeah, so once you're in, you're in.
Thank you. Okay, this was a great question submitted. So how far in advance do you get the new scripts? And now I'm not trying to get any spoilers out of them, because that would get me in trouble. But do you know what the storyline will be for the entire season? Not asking if you want to share. And does it make it easier? I mean, how far in advance do you plan for these scenes?
We get the first 2 scripts about 6 weeks before we start. And then there's a read through the week before we start filming. So we'll have the first 2 scripts and we're working on those, and then just the week before we get the next 2. So we usually have 4 scripts just before filming, and then they come when they come. they come about maybe 6 to 4 weeks before.
Yeah, I get, because I get some advance notice of what might come in terms of new sets, new locations. So it trickles through. I suppose if we're lucky we get half the series, roughly half the series by the time we get started, which is quite useful. Some series don't get anything As Caroline said, you were desperate for. By the end, you're just desperate for any notes, anything, just to tell you what you're going to be doing. But it's better than most series, surprisingly. It's pretty much organised in, as I say, better than most series.
I have a very specific question for Caroline that was submitted. Let's see how detailed it goes. I think we know the answers. Do you add lace and crochet to your costumes? And there's a specific request concerning Mary's purple blouse with a knit design at the neckline.
Purple blouse in series 4, which people won't have seen yet.
Yeah, spoiler, it came from overseas. Sorry.
No, but I think it's in regard to, there's a purple blouse that she wears to sort of key in the first episode of series 4. And it's not crochet, but it was made from scratch by a very clever lady that does all sorts of things for me, and it's got all sorts of can do all sorts of original techniques. And it's done with Russia braid. It's all hand worked with Russia braid. And she also wears a similar blouse in series 3, a cream blouse, which is tiny, thin Russia braid that's hand stitched.
So we have a follow-up question for Caroline from the same person, and an added comment she had. Do you draw your inspiration from old books and magazines? And you were really awesome. This poster.
Yes, I have lots of magazines, of original magazines from the date, from kind of 1918 onwards. I've got quite a good collection of magazines, and also fashion prints from books and photographs, and sometimes they're lifted directly from designers. There's a dress that Mary wears in series 3 when she comes back from honeymoon, which it's pink with handkerchief hem, and that was by designer V&A, who was way ahead of her time, and I thought that's quite a nice touch. She could have gone on her honeymoon and visited Paris and brought the latest fashions back. So yeah, I do draw directly from original sources.
Thank you so much. And Donald, we think you're really awesome too. we have one for you. It looks so effortless when we watch the show. How long does it take to actually shoot and finish one episode?
Well, the first episode and the last episode is slightly longer, so it's about 24 working days for each block, which is 2 episodes, so 12, 13 for each episode. Roughly, sometimes it gets a bit longer if there's big crowds and things, but yeah, that sort of range, 12, 13 days, which is longer than any modern present day series. It's just costume change and hair and all. It's just a more difficult operation, but that's about time.
But the quality does show through. We like quality. So I'm going to go for a little bit of gossip if I can get it here. So we'll ask you to both, but you can adapt it. Caroline, how far in advance do you know when you will add new characters? How do you prepare for that particular actress or actor? In particular, say, Shirley MacLaine. You can add other actors or actresses, and can you share any interesting stories about these experiences?
Well, if they're lesser characters, I get it when the script comes, but if they're bringing in, say, a new love interest, or a new major character, then the producers will tell me well in advance that they're casting somebody and this is the kind of character that they want them to be. I knew quite far in advance that Lily James would be joining the show as Lady Rose. So you talk with the producers and the director about how they see that character, and put a lot of reference together. I don't really do drawings because there's no point until you meet the actor and know what colours suit them and what shapes and everything are going to suit them. That could all change. It's much better to try various things on and form a picture of that person through the fitting. In Shirley's case, I didn't I knew there was going to be a grandmother. I didn't know it was going to be Shirley quickly, and until probably about a week before I came to America to meet her. And so it was a very quick turnaround to get Shirley's wardrobe together. I saw her in LA, and then she was on set 2 weeks later. I think everybody knows that she's coming back this year, so I had longer to plan, and as I know her now, I had longer to kind of think about her wardrobe, so it was really great actually to get the opportunity to dress her again.
Was it good working with Shirley and some of these other actors?
Yes, they're all fantastic. Shirley's brilliant, was so brilliantly supportive to me, as all the cast are, because it's a collaborative process. You don't ever put anybody in something they feel uncomfortable in, because they've got to feel like that character, and they've got to feel like those are the clothes that that character would wear. And so we had great fun in the fittings to find these characters and create that wardrobe for them.
I want to thank both Caroline and Darla. Thank you, wonderful.